Hey guys, welcome back. So today I want to talk about sub-caliber carbines, the semi-automatic versions of submachine guns. By sub-caliber, I mean they shoot a handgun cartridge, yet they're the size of a small rifle. In my hands I have a Kriss Vector, which is 45 ACP, but I'm an old fart. I got started in collecting firearms back in the 1980s when I was a kid in high school, and of course when I was a young Marine. Matter of fact, I used my first paycheck to buy a gun that I'm going to show you here very shortly. So today we're going to talk about sub-caliber carbines. Let's get started. Back in the 80s, the guns were really simple. Today, guns like the MPX I have here have become more complex. Of course, they have more features as a trade-off. The guns back in the 1980s were simple blowback designs. They're extremely crude, most of which were basic stamped sheet metal construction type guns with a telescoping bolt. They were heavy, somewhat clunky by some measure, and today they've become lighter and more complex, but again, they have more features. Guns like the MPX that I have here have a gas piston system in them versus the open bolt design. Now, of course, back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, we did have the H&K, which is the MP5 or 94, which used a roller locking mechanism, which is probably the most complex subgun of its era, but very effective and very popular. But other guns, like the Uzi or the MAC-10, guns like that, used crude construction and very simple operation systems with their blowback. Let's take a look at the MPX being fired. Very light recoil, very light gun overall, mostly aluminum construction. It's made out of machined parts versus stamped metal parts, but an extremely shootable firearm. Let's take a look at some of the earlier designs. One of the early subgun designs is the Ingram Mac-10. This is an RPB manufactured open bolt semi-automatic pistol. Now, because of goofy US laws, we're not able to have stocks on handguns unless we pay a $200 tax. So many times you'll find subguns that would normally be considered carbines because they were originally designed to be used with a stock like this Mac-10, they would have been sold as pistols. Because if they have a stock on them, they have to have a 16-inch barrel. Nobody wants a Mac-10 with a 16-inch barrel, so they delete the stock and make it into a handgun. But this would have been a submachine gun that fired from an open bolt, and its full auto counterpart. This is a semi-automatic version. Even though the bolt locks open and when I pull the trigger, the bolt slams home and fires the gun. It is a semi-automatic. Now this is one of those rare birds that the ATF didn't have a problem with in the early days, but over time, because these guns were so simple to convert to illegal machine guns, the ATF, through proclamation and a bureaucracy, just decided one day, you know what, they're no longer legal. So these went away and semi-automatic closed bolt guns became the norm. Guns like the Uzi, which we'll show you here in a second. But let's take a look at this open bolt MAC-10 being fired. Uses a grease gun type magazine, goes into the pistol grip, bolt to the rear, it's ready to fire, make sure it's on fire. Safety is right there. And when you pull the trigger, the bolt slams home and fires a gun. Really cool little handgun. This is the Mini Uzi carbine. This would have been very similar to the carbine I purchased with my first paycheck as a young Marine coming out of boot camp. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine that was a year ahead of me went into the Army. When he got out with his first paycheck, he bought an Uzi carbine. I shot it and I fell in love with it. It's a very iconic firearm and one that I just absolutely had to have. So as soon as I got the money, it was the first thing I bought. Now I bought the full-size Uzi as well. This gun came later to the US market, and this is the one that I ultimately fell in love with the most, the Mini Uzi. The Mini Uzi is slightly smaller than the full-size gun. It does have, in its proper configuration, a 7.75-inch barrel that has cuts in the barrel as a compensator. This one has a 19.8-inch barrel to meet overall length requirements under, again, those goofy US laws. So it doesn't even have a 16-inch barrel, it has a 19-inch barrel. Now I did purchase this gun to turn it into an SBR so I can put the proper length barrel on it. And once that's done, that's a very handy little gun. Perfect little 9mm truck gun. The Uzi, the Mini Uzi, the Micro Uzi, and the full-size Uzi, all three use the same basic operating principle. They fire from a closed bolt, but they have a massive telescoping bolt inside of here. It's very similar to the Mac-10. Does not fire from the open bolt. All the guns that were imported fired from a closed bolt. But you can see that bolt working with the charging handle here on the top. On the other side of the gun, you have fire controls right here, and then a magazine release. These guns fired from either a 25-round magazine or a 32-round magazine. The stock folds simply by pulling down on it and rotating it to the side. If you want to extend it, you don't have to pull down or anything, just pull on it, and it extends this thin wire stock. Now again, the Mini Uzi is one of my favorite guns. I really enjoy this gun, and I look forward to turning it into an SBR. I'll probably travel all around with it just because it's just so stinking cool. The ergonomics, they're just okay. The pistol grip is vertical to accommodate the magazine that goes in through the pistol grip. It does have a grip safety, which is a bit awkward for some folks. It's very easy to get a low grip on the gun, not engage that grip safety, then the gun won't fire. To charge the weapon and make it ready to fire, stick the magazine in, pull the bolt to the rear, let it go home on a live round, push it to fire, and make some noise. Very, very cool little gun. Now, sadly, with the 19-inch barrels, they're not suppressible. They didn't come with threaded barrels back in the day. With a 19-inch barrel, you wouldn't want to stick a suppressor off of it anyway, because it's already ridiculously long. It'd make it super extra triple ridiculously long. But if you get a shorter barrel, you can get a threaded one, and they do suppress fairly nicely. I recently fired a full auto Mini Uzi with a suppressor on it, and it's a load of fun. The full auto versions have a cyclic rate around 1,200 rounds a minute, much like a Mac-10, which is right around 1,100 rounds a minute, so they cycle very fast. The full-size Uzi, in its full auto configuration, cycled about 600 rounds a minute, very slow and usable. The shorter the guns got, the faster they cycled. The Micro Uzi, the pistol version, had a ridiculously high cyclic rate. But overall, the reliability this gun is legendary for. It's extremely simple on the insides. Now, it is made out of stamped sheet metal, just like the Mac-10, although I would say the construction and the quality is much higher than the best of the Mac-10s out there. And the reliability, again, is through the roof. Has a simple post sight here in the front, which is adjustable for elevation. Then you have two apertures back here for a rear sight, which is adjustable for windage. The Mac-10, very crude, stamped front sight, a drilled hole through a fixed rear sight. You can't really adjust the sights on them. These guns are very, very cool, and they field strip very easily. As a matter of fact, to put a barrel on it, when I want to turn it into an SBR, is that simple. Buy the shorter barrel, once I have the tack stamp, and simply drop it in and screw the muzzle nut on. So let's take a look at some of the other firearms out there. This is a tough one to beat, one of my favorites. All right, guys, she's never taken an Uzi apart before or put one together. Let's see if she can do it. Let's see how simple it is.
Oh, it's dirty.
It is dirty.
Will you stop me if I'm doing it wrong?
Yeah, you're doing fine. You're not going to break it, believe me. If you broke it, I give you $100.
Yeah? Was that the time?
Yeah. How's that for simple, guys? Probably one of the most interesting designs to come out in recent history is the Kriss Vector 45 ACP. What makes this gun unique compared to the other designs that we featured out here this afternoon is that it revectors the recoil forces downward into this area right here, which is why it's so thick. Now, it is somewhat heavy. It does use a large bolt, but it redirects that bolt energy down instead of having the bolt just come straight back like the other designs that we've shown you this afternoon. So when the gun fires, the bolt comes back slightly, and there's a weight system in here that it pushes down, and then the spring pushes it back up, forward, strips a new round, and fires it. This is an SBR. This can be purchased either as a handgun or as a carbine with a 16-inch barrel. I purchased this one as a carbine with a 16-inch barrel, and then I had to go through the process of installing the short barrel, which I think is about 5.5 inches on the gun. It's much easier buying one of these as a handgun if you plan to SBR it. The handgun will come with the facilities already there to put a stock on it once you get your paperwork back, and then you don't have to mess with the hassle of buying an expensive barrel and having somebody put it in for you or putting it in yourself, which is very challenging. So if you plan to SBR it, buy the pistol. If not, you just want to keep it as a carbine, buy the rifle version. The gun has very little recoil, but it still jumps around quite a bit, even though, despite the fact it has a unique operating system, and that's only in semi-automatic. For whatever reason, I have fired these in full auto at SHOT Show at range day, and the guns are extremely controllable on full auto. You don't really feel the benefit of the system as a semi-automatic. You still feel movement in the gun. It's moving down, it's just an awkward, different type of recoil. It's not that linear straight back recoil that you're probably used to. But again, as a full auto, this thing is unparalleled in controllability. It literally does not move off target. I hear that they're working on a 9mm version. I got to shoot one of the prototypes last year, and the 9mm should be very interesting as well. The gun is made mostly out of polymer. It has metal reinforcements where necessary. The barrel and, of course, the bolt are all metal. It has a unique firing mechanism that's housed up here in this area of the gun, and it's upside down. It does have a hammer that fires the gun. Extremely unique design. Fire controls back here by your thumb. Stock, just push a button, hinges to the side, and just kind of friction locks into place. If you want to deploy it, just kind of pull up, back, and deploy the stock. This is one of their early rifles. When I first got it, the gun had some reliability issues. It was a very early first-generation gun. Over the years, Kriss has really improved the design, and this one has had the upgraded parts put in it a few years ago, and it'll shoot everything. Semi-wad cutters that I've reloaded from my 1911s, all the way up to 230 grain ball. The original guns, they had a list of ammunition that they recommended you use in them to make them reliable. Nowadays, they'll shoot most anything. The bolt does lock open on the last shot fired. It uses standard Glock magazines. The other guns don't use Glock mags. This one does. So if you want to use Glock magazines, this is the way to go. It has a bolt release, charges the weapon, and it has a charging handle here on the left-hand side. I've put a vertical fore-end grip on it. You can't do this as a pistol, but as a rifle or as an SBR, you can get away with that. This is really handy. It just folds up out of the way. It's made by Fab Defense, I believe, and it's easily extended downward into the firing position. Let's show you the Kriss Vector being fired. I do have a Defiance suppressor on the gun as well. All right, there's a very light trigger on it. It shoots really, really nice. And again, I've had no reliability issues with the gun. I run it suppressed almost every time I take it out. It's extremely dirty. I rarely clean it or lube it. I have no problems with the gun. If you're looking for something different that shoots 45 ACP, the Kriss Vector is a very cool option. The CZ Scorpion Evo S1 is a new subgun design that makes use of polymers, but also is just a straight up blowback action. It doesn't rely on gas systems, it doesn't rely on roller locking, any of that stuff, just a very simple straight blowback design. Now, despite the fact that it's straight blowback, it's not big and clunky like the MAC-10. It doesn't have the girth even of the Uzi. It's a very streamlined little package. The bolt just moves rearward, and that's it, right? No locking mechanism outside of just the spring weight and the bolt weight itself. The selector lever, about the only complaint I've ever had about the gun was the selector lever. The ambi selector here is missing because I've removed it and replaced it with a little cap, but the original design ground into your finger when you fired the gun. It was absolutely horrible, just uncomfortable as all get out. The other option, if you don't want to buy one of these little $13 parts, is to grind it off with a Dremel tool, which is my next option, but fortunately I found this little bit right here, and I'll put a link in the description below where you can find one if you have an Evo and you want to get rid of that annoying feature. But other than that, the gun is set up with all sorts of rails, polymer construction, upper and lower, very ergonomic pistol grip. The butt stock of the original submachine gun is very easily removed, so if you buy this as a pistol, right now it's only available as a pistol, you can pick up the brace system directly from CZ, and this has a Sig SB15 brace on it using their attachment point. Now this is machined aluminum from here back. The SB15 is rubber. Out here on the front, it does have a threaded barrel, comes with a flash hider of sorts that unscrews. You need an adapter, and I've put a Silencer Co. suppressor on here, and it's very easy to suppress and runs very well suppressed. This gun is extremely reliable, so you can kind of see the heritage between this and the Mini Uzi that I was firing earlier. Very similar in operation, except this has taken it to the new extremes using modern manufacturing techniques and more modern designs. The gun is very easy to shoot. Has a charging handle right here, much like an MP5, but it also has a bolt stop, so it does lock open. On the last round fired, you can drop the bolt by simply hitting that lever, or if you don't have a magazine in the gun, you can rotate the charging handle up like an MP5 and lock the bolt to the rear. That part can be a little bit confusing. If the gun runs dry, it locks open. You can't release it by doing that. If you lock this back up here, you can't release the bolt by hitting the lever. So you have to remember how the gun's locked open. 9mm has a translucent smoke-colored magazine so you can see your rounds. Magazines are relatively affordable for this, unlike the MPX. The MPX magazines are ridiculously expensive and as scarce as hen's teeth. Charging the weapon, that's simple. Pull the charging handle to the rear, let it go home, and then fire the gun. Because of its 1913 rail system here on the top, I'm able to use an Aimpoint T1 Micro without a riser. The stock comb, or in this case the brace comb, but if it were an SMG with its stock, it sets low enough that you don't need that riser to fire it, and it co-witnesses nicely with the existing factory sights. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on my rubber dummy buddy here, my target, and he seems to be holding up just fine. It's got 600-700 rounds through him so far, no gaping holes, just bullet holes. It's a self-sealing target. Spray paint sets him back to 0. Again, he's holding up quite well. Just wanted to give you a quick status update. If you want more information on this little target, I'll put a link in the description below, and I'll keep you guys updated on how well he's holding up. All right, let's take the modern and compare it to the classic. Let's start off with the Uzi. This gun is the epitome of simplicity. Taking the gun apart is super simple. Push a button here on the top cover hinges off, grab your bolt. Now imagine if this was an open bolt, it would be even simpler. Take it out. It would be even more simple because you wouldn't have this mechanism, which is your firing mechanism or your striker mechanism. The open bolt would just simply have a bolt. Let's stick it back together here so I can get it back together quickly. Taking the barrel off the Uzi, push a button, turn the muzzle nut. I know I've already done this. Pull that out. And you can also take the pistol grip off, use the tip of a bullet, push that pin across. See if I can wrench this out of here. Gotta have strong fingers. And it comes apart. Again, very, very simple. U-shaped sheet metal, some reinforcement ribs, which also act as gunk reservoirs. Again, these guns are extremely reliable. You put dirt in them, they don't give up the ghost, they continue to work. Simple to make, simple to use, very reliable. Now, the Sig MPX, this represents the latest and greatest in engineering. Now, I know I've said some things about it that may lead you to believe that I don't like the gun. I actually like this gun a lot. It impresses me quite a bit, and I have a great time shooting it. It's a very shootable gun, far more shootable than I would say than the Uzi. The Uzi is shootable, but it's not as ergonomic. This gun is very comfortable. It's very AR-15-like. It takes a lot of its design cues from the AR-15, including the T-handle charging system, the bolt release in a familiar spot, the ping pong paddle, the selector lever, all very familiar. Also, the method of takedown is very similar to the AR-15 in that you have 2 pins that you push out. And the pins can be a little bit tight. Where did my 9mm bullet go? There it is. There it goes. Where did you go? Little stinker. All right. And you push this pin out. 2 parts. The upper and lower come apart. Trigger mechanism, AR-15 type trigger mechanism. Bolt and carrier come out just like you would expect an AR-15. Including the T-handle just falling out. Again, fairly simple, but the gun does use a gas system, okay? So up here we have a gas piston that acts on the face of the bolt carrier. It has an AR-15 type bolt, but the bolt carrier right here, the little tappet hits the front of this, drives it rearward, but that makes for a very small and light bolt compared to the Uzi's bolt, which is a straight blowback system, okay? Small and light, big and heavy. Now the Uzi, the full-size Uzis, its bolt's even bigger and heavier, which is the reason why in full auto, it cycles much slower. The lighter the bolt, the faster it can move, the faster the cyclic rate. So that gives you the 2 extremes. The very simple in the old, the more complex in the new, but they both work extremely well. I've had them both perform beyond my expectations, especially the MPX with its gas system. I expected the gas system to give me some problems. It hasn't. The gun runs great suppressed, unsuppressed, whatever. So there you have it, guys. You have everything from the old compared to the new and some stuff in between. I haven't done a comprehensive video by any means this afternoon and taken in all the subguns that are currently available on the US market. I've just given you a sample to give you an idea of what's out there and also what some of the options look like in terms of the classic versus the new. If you guys have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, you can ask those questions on our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/military arms. Also, please come by and check out Copper Custom. Some of the stuff we actually have for sale at Copper Custom, and we have some really good prices if you want to support the Military Arms channel. It's the best possible way. And if you haven't already, please swing by and check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all the best of the gun content creators out there on the web and brought them under one roof, which is full30.com. Thanks again for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon.